Hello and welcome to Marshall Sports. Today is November 22nd, 2019, and this evening we have a very special guest joining me. He is the greatest salesman to ever walk the earth, a living fantasy football legend, and a former favorite coworker of mine. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Evan Gilbert. Evan, how are we doing?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, man, Evan is a Chicago native, and today we have him on the show to tell us what in the world is going on with the Chicago Bears in 2019. Evan, just some of your general thoughts. What's going on?
It is a little bit hard to say. The defense is, still I think as strong as last year.
Yeah.
Losing Akeem Hicks was huge, though.
Mhm.
You've noticed it, I'm sure. Khalil Mack just hasn't looked the same, and a
Yeah.
lot of that, is it's due to Akeem Hicks not clogging up the middle. And then on offense, there's just a lot of problems there.
Yeah, man. I was looking at the schedule from last year compared to this year. 12-4 last year. It seemed like Chicago had finally found their quarterback. They were going to make a run in the playoffs. They pretty much ran the NFC North. Beat the Packers, beat the Vikings, and then Cody Parkey happened.
Yeah, no, I hate to, relive those memories, but yeah, we were one kick away from, beating the Eagles, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really not that different of a team, which I think is the most frustrating part. Here in Chicago, we thought Mitch was going to take some steps forward, and it
Yeah.
looks like he took a couple back just in terms of reading the field and hitting second and third options. They're just not there. And a big part of it too is when your coach goes into the post game press conference and has to use the line about how he's not an
Uh,
idiot. It's a little concerning.
well, it's insane too because I've been watching some of those post game press conferences, and the vibe I'm getting is that this team has completely, pretty much given up. It seems like from their demeanors. Do you think, in your opinion, do you think that they've given up at this point?
I mean, I hope not, but it does seem that way. Even last week, pulling Mitch with one drive left in the game and having this hip flexor issue,
Mhm.
yet he hasn't missed a single practice. Like, it sounds like a team that is just looking for anything to click, and nothing's clicking. And I think there's frustration there.
No, for sure, no doubt. You can see it on everyone's face. There's been a lot of discussion in the past weeks about is it Nagy or Trubisky? Who do you think is to blame here? Is it more the head coach, or is this one on the quarterback?
I think there's definitely blame to go around. If I had to pinpoint it, I think more of the blame's probably on Trubisky.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of he really only reads the right side of the field, and if someone's open, he's missing them a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time. Granted, I don't think Nagy's scheme this year has been nearly as good. It's kind of stagnant, and a lot of that's due to the offensive line. They're one of the most highly penalized offensive lines in the league,
Mm-hmm.
and Mitch has taken some big blindside hits. But if I had to pick one of the two, to put more blame on, probably Mitch.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people have been kind of saying that, which you mentioned the thing about him not being able to make a second read. Is this something that they saw before they drafted him? Because we're going to take a look at the draft board, and it's amazing all the quarterbacks that went after Mitch Trubisky.
It is. It is. It's one of those things that, like, hindsight's 2020, right? Looking back and seeing that you could have had some of these guys is tough.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, especially when one of them, about 10 picks down, is Patrick Mahomes, and then a couple more picks is Deshaun Watson. But at the same time, Mitch Trubisky was a Pro Bowler last year. We
He
came
was.
into the season thinking the Chicago Bears are not only playoff contenders but Super Bowl contenders.
I totally agree with that. This season the expectations were high. like we kind of mentioned before, you make one field goal last year, and
Yeah.
who knows what happens. And I mean, looking back, it's tough to see. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid offense, like Matt Nagy and Andy Reid disciple. I'd love to see what he could do with the Bears, but like I kind of said too, I mean, hindsight's 2020, and while having either of those guys now would be great, like you said, Mitch was a Pro Bowler,
Mm-hmm.
and I think
Was.
Mitch he's a talented guy. The arm's there. He just he needs to develop some confidence and just really believe in himself. It seems like that's what's missing.
Okay. So it sounds like you think Trubisky has it in him. Maybe he's caving under the pressure of this year. Um, if this continues, though, who goes first? The number 2 overall pick, or is Nagy going?
I think it's hard to have that early second round pick most likely next year and not look quarterback. I mean, when you look at especially this year in college football, there's some good guys out there that are going to be available.
Mm-hmm.
And bringing someone else in and at least seeing what they've got. I mean, whether it's a Jake Fromm or someone else, I believe the guy from Utah State is going to be around around then. I mean, it's going to be a hard look for Bears fans if we're not doing something at that position differently.
Yeah, so I mean, if Chicago, they're probably going to get a high pick if they take a quarterback. I mean, that's going to be a huge statement that they're wanting to move on from Trubisky, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And, it's hard, too, because we don't have our first-round pick. We don't have our first-round pick next year either. I mean, in that Khalil Mack trade, as great as it was and as much as I love Khalil, I mean, our future is kind of resting on what we've got right now. But, yeah, I mean, with our – it would – if we don't take a quarterback somewhere in the draft, I think Chicago is going to have a hard time dealing with that.
For sure. And we all know how brutal that city can be to bad sports teams. So
Definitely.
I mean, I'd love to see it turn around. It's going to be super interesting to see what the Bears can do for the rest of the season, but then also going into next season to see if they end up taking a quarterback in the late round. Well, I kind of just wanted to take a peek at some of these standings because to the Bears' defense, the NFC North last year was pretty struggling. The Packers had a bad year. Minnesota didn't look too good. The Lions are always the Lions. But it
Exactly.
seemed like Chicago just kind of ran the tables. Um, do you think there is any chance of the Bears somehow turning it around and making something positive out of this season, maybe a wild card run, or are they completely out of this race?
I wish I could say yeah. I mean, in terms of a wild card run with Seattle and Minnesota being so good, I just don't know if that's going to be a possibility. I think that the season it almost has to be a wash, especially with the way they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess there's always that outside chance, but I'm not trying to get my hopes up too much on that.
No, for sure. I completely understand. And another thing that I noticed, I took a peek at the schedule from this year. It hasn't been necessarily an easy going. I mean, if you look at how they're finishing the season, you got Dallas, who puts up a lot of points. You got Green Bay, who's back to being Green Bay. You go KC and Minnesota. So with that being said, I mean, I don't see how they're winning even like a few of those remaining games.
I mean, unless they play better, and Mitch really steps up, I mean, like you said, I mean that's 4 losses right there. I mean, Minnesota for Kirk Cousins is playing not like Kirk Cousins, and these other teams speak for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, yeah, I mean, just a rough year for your Bears. I hope they turn it
Definitely.
around, man. I wanted to ask you, just step aside from the Bears for a second. Who do you think is the biggest contender this year for the Super Bowl?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me that. I I don't know. I really like Seattle. I think
Really?
Seattle is really good. I think Russell Wilson is, I think he's the MVP. I know
Oh,
Lamar
yeah.
Jackson's making noise, but I think Russ is playing the best football he's ever played.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also tough to bet against the Patriots, and they're going to be
Always.
right in the thick of things. So
Always. And, I think we've already seen the AFC Championship game. It's going to be the Patriots and the Ravens, but will Lamar Jackson's inexperience get in the way of his playoff success?
That's definitely that. I could not agree more. I think the Patriots and the Ravens are definitely the two best teams, and if they play each other and Lamar plays to the best of his ability, I mean, that Ravens team is unbelievable.
Yeah, trust me, I watched them absolutely torch my Texans last
Yeah.
week. Watching that, I was like, oh my gosh, like the Texans, like we're not even close to being able to beat the best teams in the league.
And it's crazy with Lamar too, because he's a cheat code out there. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if he's passing or running; you can't stop him. He's
No,
unbelievable.
I know I mean, he's putting up video game numbers and he literally looks like a video game when he's out there spinning around, dude. The dude's basically a punt returner. He has the speed and the athleticism of a punt returner, and he plays the quarterback position. You know, last year, I felt like there were times where he was just so one-dimensional and he was just a runner. But, dude, he's throwing dimes out there now.
He is. I mean, and adding Hollywood Brown to that roster was huge. Someone he can just air the ball out to, and the guy can go run after it and just get it done.
Totally. I mean, yeah, they're just a hell of a team right now. It's going to be extremely interesting to see how the rest of this season plays out. For the Bears, do you think this is the beginning of the curse of Cody Parkey?
Oh, I hope not. if we have to live with another curse in Chicago after the Billy Goat and all of that, I don't know what I would do. But if the Bears window really was 1 year, that's just too sad to even think about right now.
Yeah, it just seems like how bizarre that whole thing was and the struggles you guys have had with kickers. It seems like it was like the perfect storm and it's the start of something horrible, but I digress. I won't go there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, ever since letting go of Robbie Gould, it's been a wild ride in terms of kickers. So
and Robbie Gould, he's been amazing ever since. What did he have one bad year and they just kicked him out?
One down year. He didn't have the leg he did he didn't have the leg he does right now in Chicago. I mean, in terms of 50+ kicks, he was never making those in Chicago. But I mean, he's unbelievable. And one bad year, and we just kind of turned our backs on him, it seemed like.
Yeah, and I know hindsight is 2020, but it would be interesting to think about, where you guys would have been last postseason if Robbie Gould was still on the roster.
Could not agree more.
I shouldn't even be saying this. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate your time. I'd love to have you on the show more often, especially to talk Chicago sports.
Of course.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. You have a good one, Evan.
You as well.
All right.